Chelsea Wolfe, she reaches out to she. Album review, let's chat about it. Hey friends, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning, here tonight to chat about this latest album from California-based singer-songwriter Miss Chelsea Wolfe. And if you are a fan of this channel, if you know me personally, you know that Chelsea is truly one of my all-time favorite artists. I mean, I've been enamored with her ever since the early days of her project, like the Grime and the Glow days, which at the time she was just a very moody, very tortured singer-songwriter with some nods to the more gothic sides of things. But this album was a lo-fi, truly bizarre and out there project that had me looking her way. And since then, I've only become more of a fan. Between the very tortured and twisted Apocalypsis, the Unknown Rooms project, which is truly one of the most haunted singer-songwriter projects I've ever heard. Also, the Pain is Beauty record, which was my first introduction to Chelsea's music. And since then, you know, she has really taken it upon herself with each new album to kind of try a little something new, whether it be her Abyss album, which touched down on doom metal, was also a fascinating deep dive into sleep paralysis. Also, she followed that up with a black metal album, the very animalistic and raw His Spun. Also, last time we heard from her, she was doing some stripped down Southern Gothic and doing it really, really well. And also, I mean, that collab album with Converge, I mean, I still feel like that doesn't get talked enough about these days. Which leads me to this latest album, which leading up to it, I did not really know what to expect. With each passing single, while I kind of liked what Chelsea was doing, I kind of felt like I needed to hear the whole project, because these singles were a real departure for her. And now the album's here, let's chat about this thing. This album starts off with Whispers in the Echo Chamber, one of the earliest singles released from this project, and right off the bat, let's just address the big old elephant in the room. This is a twisted album, and the most tortured that Chelsea has sounded in years. This is a looming, intense, truly twisted intro that sets the mood here. And for a while leading up to this album, hearing it as a single, I wasn't that into it. But hearing this in the grand scheme of things, I have warmed up to it quite a bit. It's a grisly track that constantly sounds like it just wants to pounce at any second, but yet it takes its time. I mean, the woozy guitars are great, her vocals are as haunted as ever, and the straight up spoken word portion of this tune sounds directly ripped out of, like, Resident Evil 8. It's a hell of an intro, and House of Undoing, I mean, I personally needed a track like this early on in the album, because this is where Chelsea just seems to freak out a little bit. It's easily the most upbeat and metal sounding track here. It's upbeat, it's got a big old crunchy riff, and after the very plodding, very patient opening track here, it's really just great to see her let loose. And I have to point out again, this is twisted as anything. This track is a constant build-up to the release that is this chorus. And as always, Chelsea's at the center of it all with a very swirling, devilish performance. Yeah, this is definitely one for your workout playlist. Everything Turns Blue, however, turns things much more to the ethereal side of this album. I love the woozy synths here, just how big and bulky this sounds. Like, one of the reasons I loved Abyss as much as I did when it came out was because of how suffocating it was. And it's certainly back with some interesting new twists. I mean, you're always going to get the gothic rock influence from Chelsea, but here on this album we get a lot of electronic, a lot of dark wave elements. Also on this track, Trip-Hop is the name of the game, and on paper, this all sounds bizarre. But in a shocking twist, it really makes this album a lot more intoxicating, hypnotic even. And Chelsea's performance, I'm shocked by just how dangerous it sounds at points. Otherworldly too, and this chorus, while not certainly anthemic, is definitely one that just like really sits with you. Tunnel Lights continues a string of great tracks that we get here, and once again, this was another single and another one that at first I was just kind of middle of the road on. I mean, hearing this and not knowing what the album's going to sound like, it's pretty, I don't know, it's pretty shocking. But now hearing this, you know, in between tracks that dabble in more electronic elements and some dark wave and some trip hop as well, as we get here once again with that sort of subtle beat, it makes a lot more sense to me. And it is one of the more subtle tracks here, but Chelsea sounds incredible. And when she locks in on a sound and ambiance, you know, she really knocks it out of the park. It's dark, it's ethereal, and really whimsical in its own weird, dark way. In a lot of ways, this is the most raw and genuinely dangerous sounding Chelsea Wolfe album in years, and I love it for that. However, here's my issue, and this is definitely me nitpicking. This is the biggest set of risks that Chelsea has taken seemingly in forever, maybe her entire career. And I would just say that one or two really don't pan out well. Like, for example, Salt. Chelsea here, you know, definitely has her thoughts on place, but I feel like she loses her footing. And a lot of these tracks may seem a little rough around the edges from a distance. I totally feel that. But Chelsea usually, you know, pulls it together at the end of the day. But on a track like this, it just feels like she bit off more than she can chew. It's not nearly as original or organic sounding on an album that, you know, has shown her bring in these elements of dark wave and, you know, the more electronic genres like trip hop and kind of make them their own. That's been fine, but this sounds like a damn cover. And in certain cases, I'd be okay with that. But she just really does not bring her A game here, especially in the songwriting department. This is the worst songwriting I've heard on this record, and by the end, it just comes off like a clunky mess. And personally, I was really let down by Place in the Sun, mostly because I know that when Chelsea focuses, she can put out such a beautiful, truly haunting, chilling ballad, and she goes for it here and just completely whiffs. And most of this track is Chelsea, a piano, and some distorted electronic feedback in the background. And on paper, that sounds like sex. But honestly, overall, I'm underwhelmed with this track. I mean, Chelsea's vocals are fine, but by the end of the track, they just get so monotonous. Mostly because this track doesn't progress at all. And there are some cool elements from here to there, like the bustling synths in the background. They actually sound pretty cool. Her thoughts here are impressive, but just not really thought out enough. Outside of that, yeah, this is a very experimental album from Chelsea, and ironically enough, her shortest in forever. But the rest of this album really does show her making some big strides. Like the Liminal, for example. This is the most dark track here. And yeah, that's a big statement, and I'm standing by it. There is such an end of days feel to this track that is just so beyond depressing, but it works for this album so well. And yes, I've been making a lot of nods to the Silent Hill soundtracks these days, but the subtle beat in the background and the very, very intense depressive vocals, come on. It's a pensive one, for sure, once again, but a lot of this album you have to really sit with. And I really do love the amount of space that she gives tracks like this. They might only be 4.5 minutes, but she really gives this ambiance room to breathe. And Eyes Like Nightshade, honestly, I don't know what the hell this track is. This is easily the most experimental cut here, and yeah, it works out in her favor. The pulsating industrial beat, the ambiance, this is easily one of the most off-kilter and freakish things here. There's an urgency and an anxiety to this track that just hits so freaking hard. But Chelsea remains in control and just sounds like a damn prophet at the center of this thing, even if this instrumental is freaking out there and sounds more like it should be in the opening credits to a David Fincher movie from the 90s than on a Chelsea Wolfe album in 2024. She makes it work, though. On Unseen World, the pacing is absolutely, it's so intense. Once again, the attention to detail here, it's spectacular. Chelsea, once again, lets tracks like this really breathe, just really become their own subtle ambiance. And Chelsea's performance here is one of my favorites. The chants and the humming throughout add a lot. It's a great addition to this already very witchy atmosphere. And guess what? Because the pacing here is done so expertly, when things pop in like crashing drums and synths out of nowhere, it's genuinely exciting. And with Dusk as a finale, Chelsea has saved the best track for last. Leading up to this album, this was my favorite single, and I stand by it. I think it's the best track here. Y'all wanted a Chelsea ballad? She gives us a great Chelsea ballad. This track is so bluesy and tragic, and Chelsea is sounding at her most like mentally exhausted. And somehow all of this leads to, I would argue, the most instantaneous track here, which is really odd. I mean, the second that this dropped as a single, it hit me. It hit me hard. It's also one of the most unique and genuinely interesting sounds of this entire record. And once again, there is such a sense of finality to it. Oh. And it's all a build up to the last minute and a half, which is done expertly and ends in this really great crescendo of euphoria, which is something I did not expect to hear on this album, but yet here we are. This is not going to be a Chelsea album for everybody. If you enjoyed her albums in the past, you may very well like this. You may very well think that she has been experimenting too much, which is, you know, it's certainly up for debate, but I think that she really pushes herself here with the much more electronic, sounds. Also, her songwriting has just come full circle, and a lot of this album is just Chelsea trying something new and making it work. Is it as mind-blowing as like Abyss or Pain is Beauty? No, but this is just another very solid record from Chelsea that shows her continuing to push herself, and I'll always continue to enjoy that, and I can't wait to see what she does next. I'm feeling a light 8 on this project, but let me know what you all think down below. If you like the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, friends.